Hey guys, so welcome back to the Notes and Quotes podcast. It's so lovely to see you guys again and to talk to you. So, today we're talking about a really interesting topic. We're talking about some relationships, specifically family relationships, specifically step family relationships. So, family relationships are one of those things that can be so complex. Sometimes they're super easy and straightforward, and that's great for those families, and you get along well with everybody and there's no major changes in the family structure and whatnot. But I think for the most part, everybody has some sort of complexity in their families, whether it's a nuclear family or whether it's a blended family, whichever. Everyone has some level of complexity in their families. If anything, today families have become increasingly complex and the structure of them is constantly changing. And for me, I have a lot of experience being in a non traditional family structure. I have been a part of a step family for a really long time, two different step families for a really long time in a non traditional family structure. But it doesn't really make me an expert on them. And because of that, I was actually wondering whether or not I should even do this episode because I know I'm not an expert and I know I'm still figuring it out and it can be a really touchy subject for a lot of people. And there are a lot of different feelings involved when you talk about topics like this. So I decided instead of braving the waters of this topic by myself, I would bring in a lovely guest. Dr. Patricia Papernow is a psychologist in her fifth decade of working with blended families. She teaches all over the US and the world about what works and what doesn't to meet the often intense challenges that step families face. She's the author of the two leading books in the field, Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships, What Works and What Doesn't, and the Step Family Handbook, From Dating to Getting Serious to Forming a Blended Family, as well as dozens of articles for helping professionals, and she has received several awards for her contributions to family psychology and family therapy. So I think it goes without saying that Dr. Papernow is more than qualified to talk about this topic today, and I'm so absolutely honored to have her on my podcast. So thank you so much, Dr. Papernow, for joining me today. How are you doing?
Well, I'm glad to be here. And as I said before we started, I'm somewhere between passionate and desperate to put this information into the hands of people who can use it.
Yeah. And I remember when I was starting out looking for somebody to help me out with this episode because I had wanted to do this episode for a while because it comes from a personal place as well because I have a lot of experience, personal hands-on experience with step families because I'm a part of two different ones because my parents got divorced when I was maybe in primary school and then they both remarried. So I have two step families on either side. So I've had to navigate all of the dynamics of that. So I knew I wasn't the person to be able to talk about this today, so I needed to bring on an expert. And you were one of the first people that I found when I was doing my research and when I went through all of your credentials and everything that you've done. It's just incredible. And I'm so happy that you decided to come today. So, as we always do for these episodes, we start off with the quote of the day. So, would you like to share your quote with our audience?
Sure. What we call blended families often begin with high hopes, but especially the adult couples can quickly face challenges with kids who seem resistant, with differences in discipline, conflicts over roles and financings, not to mention issues with ex spouses. That term blended also can add shame to unmet expectations. And the good news is we really know what works here. We know what works to meet these challenges.
Yeah. And it's actually the interesting thing about that quote was something that I never thought about, the term blended families putting some kind of just a shroud of guilt on to other step families. And I never thought about that ever. So do you want to share a little bit about that, about why that is?
Yes, because I think that uh, the thing is, at least in the States, 42% of Americans have a close step family relationship. The number is probably pretty close in the UK and throughout the world. And it's a fundamentally different structure.
Wow.
And so it's sort of like, well, I'll use United States cities. If you're driving around the Los Angeles freeway and you have a map of Indianapolis, you're going to make a lot of wrong turns. You're going to have accidents. You're going to start getting tense with each other. You're going to blame each other for why did you do that? The first time family is the wrong map. And the good news is we have a map. We know what these challenges are. We know, and the reason that this structure is different is that first time families start with a couple. The couple relationship has a little time to build. And then the kid enters the couple's already established relationship. And really important in a first time family, kids come hardwired for what we call attachment to both mom and dad, to both parents, and vice versa. And over time, that attachment grows. The next kid comes into that already gathering sense of connection and also of how we do things. And by a few years in, lots of the ways that we do things no longer even have language. Um, they just are how we do it. When there's a split, you have a parent and his or her kids, and the step parent comes as an outsider to all of that. And if they bring kids, those kids are also in a really changing landscape that can be quite upsetting and disturbing for everybody. And in a step family, the primary connection and how we do things is between a parent and his or her kids, not in the couple and not between step parents and step kids. That's the structure that makes the challenges that I always talk about.
That's so interesting, and it's so true because I've definitely experienced that. It makes sense because when you are born, you're kind of hardwired to have a close relationship with both of your biological parents if you are living in a home with both of those parents, and it's natural to just kind of create your own rhythm and figure out how to do things without, like you said, without having to actually put specific names or structures for things in place. You just know. And then when somebody else comes in, they're used to a different structure maybe in their family,
Yes.
and it's like you're meshing two things that don't know each other. Even if you may have known the step parent for a while as like a family friend, it's still very different when they come and they're a part of your family now. So, what do you see as some of the common main challenges that step families usually have when they finally come together and they have this new structure that they're facing?
Well, there are 5 challenges that I talk about. The first is that kids in a step family uh, enter a step family very differently from a first time family. And the adults are thrilled to have found each other. What's better than falling in love and having somebody you want to spend your life with? So adults are often blind to what kids are going through. So for kids, we there's extra loss. It's a gain for the adults. I found the love of my life, right? But for kids, a couple things. The first is there's a loss of divorce that precedes this. The second is we have study after study that when parents recouple, kids lose time and attention. Parents turn towards their love, um, and kids aren't getting quite the connection that they need. Then the second is that as the rate of change goes up, kids' well-being goes down. That's a lot of change already. You're going through whatever happened before the divorce, single parent family, which usually involves moving. And now you got this new person, which usually involves moving. And even if it does, new smells, new tastes, maybe other kids. Uh, and you're losing your parent. So kids are often not too happy about this. And the adults will often say that kids are resistant or manipulative. Kids are struggling often.
Yeah, that's so true, actually. So, so true.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, it definitely does. Yeah,
Mhm.
it does.
So that's the first challenge. The second is uh, because the primary attachment, the strong attachment, and the shared sense of how we do things lies between parents and children. Every time a kid comes in the room, if the kid needs something, they're reaching for their parent. And now we're finding out that step parent step child relationships are really important for kids' well being. However, the base, the place I go is mom or dad. Um, uh, and so a kid comes in the room where you're sitting at dinner and the kid has a story to tell. They're going to tell that story to their parent.
Yeah, it's
And the
natural.
parent, right, absolutely natural. And the parent needs to, in a first time family, both parents would be interested. And the kid would be reaching to both parents usually. In a step family, the parent, if you come running off the bus because you're my kid and you lost a soccer game or you won a soccer game, you come in the door. I'm sitting there talking to my new sweetie. You come in the door saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," I- I'm going to turn to you. I've turned my back on my partner, and my partner gets left out over and over. And we're not wired for this as grown-ups, as humans. We are wired for people close to us to turn towards us. And when they turn away, it's dysregulating biologically. So step parents get left out over and over and over again. And when they speak up, parents are stuck insiders. So, later in the evening, my partner says, "Why'd you do that again?" Do what?
Yeah.
She interrupted us. Right? So now
Right, yeah.
the parent is a stuck insider. And stuck insiders get really anxious about being able to please all the people they care about, and they often get defensive. And step parents get left out and they get rejected and feel invisible. And when they speak up, parents say, "But it's my kid." And now step parents are more alone. So that's the insider outsider challenge. And it is part of what pulls parents away from kids. Because when I turn to my sweetie in a step family, then I have to turn away from my kids and vice versa. So that's the second challenge. It is if you don't expect it. And it turns out there are things to do for each of these things. I'll stop and say a little bit about that. One thing is if you know that it's the structure, it's not that my partner doesn't care about me. It's not that I'm failing as a parent. Um, It's that this structure makes insiders and outsiders. And a couple of things. One is that's why I put quotes around blended family whenever I use it. I always put quotes around it because it's the wish. It's what we
Yeah.
want,
Yeah.
but it isn't a reality. So having a map, knowing this is what the structure creates is very helpful. Another is step families really do need to do things together in the beginning and throughout that makes an us, and they need to carve out regular, reliable parent child time and couple times. Um, and our clinical training is the couple is the center. If the couple's okay, everybody else is okay. That's not true in a step family. In a step family, the parent child relationship, when that relationship is close and warm and solid, kids are more available to step parents. And when the step parent step child relationship is more comfortable, that's better for the couple. So it's both and in step families, not either or. And the third thing is in a step family, step parents and step kids need some time alone together to get to know each other. Because every time the parent's there, the step parent is pushed to the outside.
Yeah, this would be like the third person.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. So if I know I'm going to have time with I'm a step parent, I'm going to have time with my sweetie, and the kid is here, I can step back. If I'm the parent and I know that this is normal, I may over the head of my kid wink at my partner, or just let them know I know, and I'll see you later. Um,
Yeah,
so
just like
that
little things.
yeah, those moves are huge. And going back to the kids challenge, parent-child time is really important in step families. And when you do that, you need step couple time to balance it. And the other thing is couples have to slow down, and it is so hard. You're in love. You want to move forward. I'm in my second marriage. We didn't go slow. My poor daughter, you know. It's hard to go slow. The kids need us to go slow, and they need a lot more. warning. Waking up in the morning and finding daddy's girlfriend here is not a good surprise. A good surprise is a puppy. That's a good surprise. Daddy's girlfriend here in the morning, that is not a good surprise. Uh, Daddy saying, Janie's coming over. She's coming over tonight. She's going to stay 2 hours and then she's going home. And I
Yeah.
tell you on Monday and she comes on Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, you have like a clear expectation.
Exactly. And you and I are going to have time together on Tuesday night before she comes.
Right.
So those are the first two challenges, kids and insiders and outsiders. Shall we go on? You want a third?
Yeah, yeah, I'm so
Okay.
interested. It's so because it's just absolutely fascinating how just to see all of these different things. It's
Well,
crazy.
here's the third challenge, and it's really important. And that is that we are learning that both step parent, step child relationships and parent child relationships are really important for kids' well being. But the challenge is that step family structure divides parents and step parents. Step parents everywhere, I've now taught all over the world. Step parents everywhere want more structure and more limits with their step kids because they're not used to them. Behavior that's irritating to a step parent is normal to a parent. Uh, and parents everywhere want more acceptance and love for their kids.
Yeah.
So, my kid would stand in the front of the refrigerator and eat out of it. I was a single parent for 10 years. I'm thrilled to have her feeding herself. My husband is like, why are you letting her do that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's
To
kind
him,
of
it's
the
a
like sorry, it's kind of the like dichotomy of just like if you look at other kids that are doing or like throwing a tantrum or doing something
yeah,
crazy, it's just it annoys you, but then if it's your kid, it's like okay, I'm have more patience for that kind of thing.
exactly. And that's partly neurobiological. It turns out this is my colleague Mona Fishbane, when you have connections with people, emotional connections, that makes a biological sense of calm and steadiness. And so when you have positive experiences in your body's bank, the kid does something ucky, it's not as upsetting. And actually, when anything ucky happens, if you have positive experiences to draw on, it's not as upsetting. Step parents don't have any of that to draw on. They
Yeah.
don't have the experience of having held a baby when they were first born and, looking in their eyes and having them look back. A parent has that. So it makes it less irritating. And then you have shared understandings about how things go, how you do things. And they're shared between the parent and the kid. So that's the first dilemma. The second is we now have over 30 studies that the parent needs to remain the disciplinarian. And if you're listening, if you got nothing else, this is one of the most important things, and it's one of the least intuitive. If I'm a step parent and I'm an adult, and especially if I come from a family where for adults is important, I expect a discipline. Besides, the kid's behavior is upsetting me more than it's upsetting and my partner. And I think my partner's a wimp because they're not making sure their
Disciplining
kids
their
don't do
kids.
this or that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the step parents are pulled to discipline for all those reasons, and it doesn't work. It backfires. It makes kids more resistant. It makes them more upset. Some kids get more acting out. Some kids get more depressed. The parent has to remain the limit setter and the disciplinarian until or unless step parents have a close, caring, trusting relationship. So
Not
step
in their
parent,
like positivity bank, as you said.
e- exactly, and kids trust them enough. And then it needs to be what we call authoritative discipline. It turns out that authoritarian is do this or else. Authoritative is, I know this is hard, sweetie. I know it's hard, but I do want you to say hello to your step parent. Authoritative discipline leads with warmth and connection. It gives kids a lot of what we call secure attachment, and it sets limits in a calm, caring way, realistic. Authoritarian is, I say jump, you say how high. Step parents are pulled into authoritarian because It's so irritating. And that is the worst. It's not good with parents and kids. It is toxic for step parents and step kids. So step parents need to work on, I call it connection, not correction. Your focus is on getting to know these kids. And how do you get to know them? Do one-to-one things with them without the parent. Do one-to-one things that are fun, that you both enjoy. You know, shoot baskets with a really shy kid. And, I had a family where really, really shy 12-year-old little boy with a very outgoing, noisy stepmother with her noisy 8-year-old daughter. And he would come in and just go to his room. Well, that kid played basketball, and his stepmother was captain of her basketball team. So she started shooting baskets with him. It was perfect because
Oh.
that gave them a way to connect, right? My one of my stepdaughters took me shopping. I hate to shop, and she loved to shop. So she took me clothes shopping. One of my stepsons showed me how to do which technology was it at the time? Facebook or something. He told me how to do it. I don't know how to do these things. They do.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I left something out of kids. Really important to know. Age makes a difference. 8 and under, the research is easier for kids. Older kids, it's harder. Easier for boys than girls, and hardest for 11, 12, 13-year-old girls. Which exactly.
It's so hard to get them to like things and to like you and everything, even for the parents sometimes. So when a step parent comes in, I can see why that would be even 10
Like
times harder.
exactly. And I think we raise girls very tuned into relationship.
Yeah.
So when relationship shifts, it really impacts girls. My kid was, that's how old my kid was when I met my second husband. And I had not read this research
13.
yet. Yep. But boy, did we live it. Oh my God. There were like weeks when they didn't talk to each other.
Oh no.
And you
So
know
how
what
did
got
you
them
fix
together?
that?
I'll
Yeah.
tell you what was horrible. What got them together was I am originally a Californian.
Mhm.
Uh, my husband is New England, up, down, and sideways. And my daughter was born in New England. So my daughter has taste that is much more like my husband's. And we were decorating a dining room with lots of windows, and I wanted to paint it terracotta, sort of clay colored, Mexican.
Yeah.
And he wanted wallpaper.
Oh. Not the same thing at all.
Not at all. Plus, we didn't have any money, and cheap wallpaper is really ugly. And the wallpaper he wanted had urns on it with it was dark blue with urns. I hated it. And he left the wallpaper book on the dining room table. And my daughter came down one morning in a foul mood. And she walks by the dining room table. She flips open the wallpaper. And which one does she like? She says, I like that one. And guess which one it was?
The urn.
And here's where my training did not help. My understanding did not help until that moment would help me understand what was happening, but I couldn't fix it. What happened at that moment is I said, uh-huh. I said, oh, I hate that wallpaper. And my daughter and my husband started arguing on the same side. That is beautiful wallpaper. That would be great wallpaper. And I said, I went about 3 rounds till they were pretty, pretty
Close knit in their
beamed
argument.
up. And then I said, listen, guys, I will let this, I will live with this wallpaper if you two will talk.
I love that. It was sneaky but
It
effective.
was brilliant. Well, and that was where my training was really helpful. The two of them went in the living room, and I was trying to listen. I couldn't listen where I wasn't seen. But the first thing she said was, "You're not my father." Now, I'm a step family expert. How many times had I said to her, "Honey, he's not your father. You have a father. and he has a permanent place in your heart. She had a difficult, very, very difficult narcissistic father. I know that you and he aren't getting along and he doesn't feel good, but he's your father. That is a permanent place in your heart. I hope you come to like Steve, but it'll be a different place in your heart. I'd said it. It didn't stick.
No, it has to, you have to like accept that yourself. So many people can say it to you, but it doesn't sink in until like you yourself actually understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so she said to him, "You're not my father." And he said, "I know, sweetie. I know I'm not your father. I'm not going to replace your father. I know it's hard between you two, but I'm not going to replace your father. I hope we can be friends." And that was the beginning. And then we would shop together, like for light fixtures. And I'd look at something and say, "Oh my God, that is so ugly." And the two of
And
them
they
would say,
loved it.
"Oh, that's beautiful." They even snuck a few things by me that I didn't notice. Months later, like, "Well, how come that got there? I never liked it." And the two of them looked at each other.
I mean, if it's bonding and it works, then it works.
Right. So that was a way for them to bond, for me to be the outsider. I worked with a family where uh, stepdad and the daughter were good ice skaters, and mom was a terrible ice skater. So going ice skating was a really good thing to do because that put the stepdad and the stepdaughter together and left the mom as the outside. If mom and stepdaughter had been good ice skaters and stepdad hadn't, that would that wouldn't have worked.
They probably would have had to find some other thing, I guess, to
Yes.
bond over. Because for me, with my stepdad, I have a really good relationship with my stepdad,
Oh, nice.
and he was a family friend for a while, but he was never in the family role. Like he was always, like a family friend, and we saw him every now and then. But then when he and my mom got together, we were on good terms, but we weren't at family level yet.
Uh-huh.
So for us, I think he made a really good effort of trying to make that connection, which I don't think I had before on my dad's side
Oh.
of the step family. So I could see him like actually making an effort to connect with us. And I think now, probably like years later, we have found that going to cafes and going to charity shops and thrifting and that kind of thing is our thing that we both like together, and then going on walks and that kind of things. We both really
Oh,
like
that's
nature.
wonderful.
Yeah. So, and my mom is not really the type that really likes those kinds of things. She's very different. So we kind of tend to do those things together, which, as you said, really does help to strengthen the relationship. And then with my brother, he tried to find different things that would work. So my brother is much more reserved than me. He's much more quiet and just sticks to himself and is a man of few words. So he but he does like sports. So my stepdad decided to try invite him to play basketball, to play tennis, to see which ones he would respond to. And then every now and then my brother would start coming to him and being like, "Oh, do you want to go play tennis today?" And then now and
Oh,
it
wow.
just the relationship started to
Perfect.
build. Yeah. Yeah.
How
So
old
I
were
can
you
see that.
guys?
We were pretty old, to be honest. I was probably 18 when they actually got officially married, and my brother was probably about 16, or yeah, probably 16 because he's 2 years younger than me. So 16 and 18. But with my stepmom, we were a lot younger, and now that I think about it, it's actually around that age. I think I was maybe 13 or 11 when they got together, and it was a lot harder for sure. It definitely was, and now it makes sense. It makes sense.
Oh, I'm so glad. It's nice when it makes sense, isn't it? It
Yeah,
helps.
yeah. It's like
Yeah,
clarity.
yeah. It sounds
But
like your stepdad really reached out. And
yeah,
he
he
reached
did.
out around things that you didn't have with your mom and you didn't have with your dad. And so there was a channel there. And boy, he looked for it. Oh, let him
Yeah,
know. That's
yeah. I
wonderful.
should. I should let him know that he did a really good job with that.
He
And I didn't.
did. Step,
Yeah, I didn't
step
see it through
parents
this lens until
love
you
to hear
said.
that.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
will. I will let him know today. But what do you think are some misconceptions, though, when it comes to step families? Because for me, I didn't know a lot of the things that you'd spoken about just now, and I'm sure so many people don't know them either, which I guess explains the desperation. for getting the
Right.
information out. But what do you think are some misconceptions that come with it?
Well, let me come back to that. I'm just going to tell you the two other challenges.
Oh
So
yeah,
the
sorry, I
the
totally
first
forgot
is
that we
kids.
didn't go through all.
That's okay. The second is insiders and outsiders. And sometimes kids are insiders and outsiders too, by the way. If you're the kid who comes in and out, you come into an up and running family and you're the outsider. And the third is parenting and step parent. Parents need to be the lead. Step parents do need input out of kids' earshot. Step parents really need input, but you got to be kind, guys, because parents are sensitive. So you got to be kind. Don't say your kids are wimps. Say, "Gee, can we do something about the mess in the hallway?" Those are
Yeah.
the first three. The fourth is we've got two different cultures coming together.
Right.
You know, uh, and both my husband and I were Jewish, but we couldn't have been more different. He was much more of a, this is how you do things right and wrong. And my daughter and I were much more sort of sloppy.
She's a bit more wishy-washy with it.
Right. So there are a lot of understood things between the parent and child about how we do things that are different. And it takes time. And the fifth is there's another person, another parent outside the family who is a permanent part of a step family. And what we know is that the strongest predictor of kids' well being is not whether they're in a step family or a first time family or a single parent family or first time family. It's the amount of tension and conflict between the adults and also good positive parenting practices. So, really important to acknowledge and make room for and support kids' relationships with all the adults in their lives. Those are the five challenges. What are the misconceptions? I think the main one is, oh, we're going to make a brand new family. And I love you, so I'll love your kids. And I had a bad marriage before, and this will be so much better. Uh, and so you end up feeling like you're failing rather than like we're driving in a different territory and we need a different map. I think that's the main one. And the other one is that when kids struggle, they don't usually say, "Mommy, I'm struggling."
No,
They
I
get
what
right?
kid does?
They get pissy. They fall apart or they get depressed and they withdraw. Um, and because the adults are happy and glad to be together and disappointed that things aren't going swimmingly, it's easy to label the kids as manipulative or acting out. And oftentimes, what it is that adults move too fast. Kids are not getting enough parent-child time, or the step parent is or the step parent has stepped into discipline.
That makes so
And
much
I,
sense.
I think that discipline is one of the biggest. I had three consultations in a row a few years ago. They were all teen girls hospitalized and for being suicidal, and every single one, mom had recoupled, and stepdad had stepped into authoritarian discipline. Every single one. And of course, as the kid started to act out more, the step parent got more and more stiff and authoritarian, which made it worse and worse and worse. And the kids ended up hospitalized.
That's insane. I guess it was like a downward spiral, basically. And it
Exactly.
makes sense because they wouldn't have known about these
Yeah,
things. And then you just kind of think, okay, if there's a problem, then we need to fix the problem with discipline. And
exactly.
it doesn't fix anything.
Well, plus one of the guys, poor guy, his ex-wife, who lives in California, which is far away from here, said, "If you don't get this kid to behave better, I'm not going to let you see our kids."
What? Whoa. Well, I
And she was
mean,
behaving pretty badly.
yeah, but I don't know if that was the best move.
It made sense to her, but it put that much more pressure on the poor stepdad to make this
Yeah.
kid behave, which was not in his control.
Yeah. But what do you do in those situations if, for example, the kid is actually misbehaving and the parent isn't really disciplined, and then you're kind of caught in this limbo because it's still, even though you are an outsider, it's still your life as well. And
It
you
sure
still,
is.
yeah, so you still want to just kind of be walked all over at the same time. So how do you balance that?
Exactly. You know, one of the things we're learning is that struggling step families and thriving step families face the same challenges, but thriving step families have better interpersonal skills. They're better at talking about differences in a kind and calm way. They're so if you're a step parent and the kid is acting out, your job is to say to the parent, not you are a wimpy, weak parent, because I guarantee you that will get defensiveness. Your job is to say, honey, can we talk about Amanda? I'm really worried. Uh, this behavior looks like it's okay with you. I'm upset about it. I'm worried about it. I'm really concerned that, the minute you ask her to do something, she yells at you, and then you give up.
Right.
Uh, can we be just a little firmer with her? Could we, or uh, a mom of a 6-year-old kid has chores for that kid, expects that kid to help clear the dishes, and we'll make this a lesbian couple. The other mom has a 12-year-old kid who's really overwhelmed with this new family and very shy, and that kid has no chores. So they have dinner. The 12-year-old barely talks. The young 6-year-old dominates the family. And after dinner, the 12-year-old gets out of there and goes to his room as fast as he can, leaving all the dishes on the table. And the 6-year-old helps clear the table. So
Yeah,
the
that's a
mom
recipe
of,
for conflict.
right, the mom of the 6-year-old's upset about this. And here's what she does that's skillful. She waits for a calm time when the kids aren't home. She reaches across and takes her sweetie's hand and she says, honey, I think Tommy's old enough to do all the dishes. And mom is going to be a little defensive. She's going to say, I hate to ask more of him. I'm afraid he won't come over. He's not used to it. Um, and stepmom's disappointed. And it's maybe the first conversation and the second and the third. And by the fourth, the stepmom says, I really think we can ask more of him. Really, honey. And mom says, yeah, I do everything for him. But you know what? Doing all the dishes is too much. What if we ask him to clear the table? And stepmom says, deal. And the person who asks the kid to clear the table is mom. Mom says, Tommy, we haven't asked much of you. I think you're old enough to clear the table. And Tommy says, that was her idea. And, mom says, actually, it was. I think you're old enough to do it. Come on, I'll help you. So that was the same difference handled really well, very skillfully. And part of the skill is whenever the stepmom got upset, she waited till she was calm to come back. She was kind. She didn't label. She didn't say your kid is a lazy something or other. Look at my kid. She didn't say you're a weak parent. She said, gee, can we ask a little more of your kid? And yeah, I know it's hard.
I think lashing out and then kind of trying to project your own family cultures and your own norms and stuff onto somebody else forcefully because you feel like it should be expected is never, it just naturally is met with defensiveness when somebody else tries to change you or put you in a situation where you're not comfortable with and doesn't give you time to grow. It naturally makes you not want to do that thing. So yeah, but
Really
what if,
well put.
yeah, I mean, I it's personal experience. So,
When I lash out, it doesn't go well.
yeah. Yeah, there's so many times where that's happened, and I mean, just even in casual situations. So, for example, like if you see the dishes in the sink are full and you mentally plan to do it, but then somebody else comes and says, "Why don't you ever do the dishes?" and you immediately don't want to do the dishes anymore.
You
So,
got it.
yeah. But what if
That's
there's a
exactly
situation
right.
where it's like all of the wrong things were done already in the step family, and we've gotten to a point where it's like it's a really terrible relationship between step parent and step kid, and there's tension between step parent and parent, and it's just all around tension and it's all around conflict and nobody's speaking and all of this stuff and there's it's so far gone. How do we backtrack and fix it to make it a more healthy situation?
It's a wonderful question. And here's part of the sad news. We don't train therapists in step families. I stand in front of two or 300 clinicians and ask, I used to ask, how many of you had a course on working with step families? I don't ask that anymore. How many of you had a class? And maybe, Naomi, 3 people raise their hands. It breaks my heart. I get like 5 or 6 referrals through my website. I don't do clinical work anymore, but 5 or 6 referrals through my website of people desperate. They found my book. They found Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships. And oh my God, now I get it. Who do you know who does this? There aren't enough. So by the time you get into a real bad place, first of all, getting some good information will help. Look for Surviving and Thriving in Step Family Relationships or the Step Family Handbook. And if you don't like to read, I have a kid who does not like to read. Um, both of them are on tape, and my website, and if you Google Papernow, Papernow plus Step Families, it'll come up because there aren't other Papernows. There are lots of there's some videos, there are podcasts and interviews, so you can get the information another way. So the first is to learn the map. What is the map we're in here, and what's going to work? And oftentimes, if things are really bad, you're going to need some help. But finding good help is really hard. What I say to people is get referrals for a good therapist. Read my book, bring it to them, and say, "This has been helpful. Would you please read it? Can we talk about it in a few weeks?"
Yeah.
Uh, uh, so I think between step parents and step kids, if things have gone badly, and the step parent starts to learn, those 3 stepdads of those 3 teens who were in the hospital, part of the stepdad's job was to say to that teen, I didn't know any better.
Mm.
This is what I thought I should do. And I'm sorry. It must have been really hard for you. Now, that takes some coaching for most people. It's
Oh
called
yeah.
repair, and it makes a big difference.
It's not always easy to admit that you were wrong even naturally, and then in a step parent step kid situation it's even harder.
Exactly. It really is harder. And here's the other thing. Step parents, really, I left this out of Insider Outsider. Step parents are being rejected often. If kids aren't ready, they're turning away. And even when you get it, it's very painful. When I was first dating my husband, I was already an international expert on step families. And his daughter, who would have been about 18 or 17 at the time, uh, we were still living separately, and I was in his house hanging out with his daughter. And her mother, his ex-wife, came over. This was her former house. She walked in. I had been connecting with my stepdaughter. My stepdaughter turned her back on me and turned toward her mom. I understood exactly what she was doing. She knew her mom was entering and watching her ex-husband with a new person he was in love with. She felt very protective of her mom. I totally understood in my left brain. And the experience of being shunned, the experience of having this kid turn her back on me was so painful. I could barely speak to her for 3 days. It was illuminating. I understood completely, and it was still painful. What was really important is that I could reach for my husband and say, he wasn't my husband at that time, my sweetie, and say, I need a hug. Step parents really need to be able to turn to their partners and say that was hard. And they need their partners to be able to say, what's your problem? It's my kid. But, oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. And while I'm on physical connection, in a step family, you really need to keep physical contact out of the sight of kids. Oftentimes, parents will believe I'm giving my kid a different model, a much more loving model. But there's something about physical contact between mom or dad and somebody who's not my mom or dad that for many kids, it intensifies their sense of loss. it intensifies that sense of change, and it also makes what we call a loyalty bind. You know, if I care about this new person, then I'm disloyal to my mom or dad in the other house. So
So
be physical,
interesting.
hug, cuddle, but do it out of kids' eyesight.
Yeah. I never thought about that. That's so
Yeah,
interesting. Wow. Yeah, because you don't think about that kind of thing. Like how being having physical contact with your partner or your husband or your wife, whoever, in front of your stepkids might have a negative impact on their loyalty to whoever, to their first parent and whatnot. It makes sense. It's just something that I think a lot of people wouldn't
yeah.
have really thought about.
And what's that like to hear? Did you have to watch either of your parents being all
For
smoochy?
me, I mean, so my stepmom came first before my stepdad. My
Uh-huh.
mom remarried a lot later, so
That's
I
pretty
by the time
typical.
my mom
Yeah.
remarried, I kind of had a mental preparation.
You had a map.
Yeah, I had the map. I had the correct map for this new step family. But for the first one with my stepmom, it was hard. It was hard to
Yeah,
see, and it was
yeah,
just I didn't it didn't hit me why it was hard. I would just see things and I would see them like,
exactly.
maybe kiss, or I would see them hug, or I would see them like cuddling on the couch or something. And it would just kind of make me feel slightly uncomfortable, but I didn't know why, you know?
Right.
And then I would just kind of turn away or maybe leave the room or something. And it was weird. It was a weird concept to process. But with my stepdad, when he came into the picture eventually, and they were showing physical contact and they were showing signs of affection and that kind of thing, it didn't affect me as much as it did with the stepmom, because I don't know if it had to do with the different genders or whatever, or
Uh-huh.
if it had to do with the fact that I already had a good relationship with him and I
Uh-huh.
respected him and I
All
accepted
of the
him. And
above.
yeah, so I'm not even, yeah, it may have been all of the above.
Oh, I bet it's really helpful to your listeners to hear because we often don't hear kids.
Mhm.
Kids don't have language,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
especially
and you're
because
just
they're always the subordinate in the situation,
right.
you know?
Right. And it is one of the things that adults can do for kids is to say, you know, if a kid says, I hate my stepmom, easy for dad to want to say, oh, but she's a nice person. But,
Yeah,
and
well,
then
of
how
course
does
you
the
think
kid
so.
feel? And then how does the kid feel? You didn't get heard, right?
Mhm.
And maybe you try a couple more times and you give up and you feel a little depressed. You don't know why. Much better if dad says, gee, sweetie, it sounds like this is hard for you. Something's hard about this. And if the adults can help kids put language, gee, it looks like we did this really fast and it's really tough for you. You know, you finally read my book and you got know now you know what you did. You can go back and say, you know, we thought we were blending, but it sounds like we were creaming you. And we didn't mean to. Can be
Yeah.
very helpful to kids.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it sounds like
I
it's
do
helpful
see
to
that.
you to have language for it, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's
Yeah.
like I said, putting words and understanding things that I didn't understand before. And
Yeah.
the concept of having a first family map versus a step family map just makes so much sense, because it's a completely different ballpark. It's a completely different set of expectations and relationships and everything. And then the other thing that you said a while back that really resonated with me is having the biological parent kind of stuck in the middle, where you're trying to keep your relationship with your kids and maintain all of the positiveness there, but then also do the same thing with your relationship, and a lot of times those two can be in conflict and then you're stuck in the middle. And I think for a lot of step parents that I've heard of, or that situations that I've seen, and sometimes even in my own situation, it's felt like the parent has to kind of choose two sides, and then you end up messing up the other side, and it just can be a mess.
Right. And knowing that both and you, you know, and that every time we get together, I'm going to be in this position. The step parent's going to be in an outsider position. And there's things we can do about this.
Yeah.
Don't try. And I'd say to family therapists often get trained to have the whole family in the room. But when you
Mhm.
put a whole step family in the room, that exactly what you're describing is going to happen.
Disaster.
so so better to work. We call it in therapy. We call them subsystems: the parent-child relationship, the couple relationship. Do them
Mm.
parallel.
Okay. Interesting, actually. I'm so sad that so much of this is not out there as much as it should be. And it's also so shocking that so many therapists have not gotten this information. It seems crucial to me, especially in this day and age where step families are now becoming so much more prominent, and the traditional first family is not the norm anymore because so many people are, the rate of divorce is super high. Sometimes other parents die and then they remarry, and there's so many different situations. So it just seems logical to have this information out there, but it's crazy that
Well,
it's not.
it is, and I'm so glad you're doing this. And you just
Yeah.
mentioned something that's important. It used to, which is what happens if a parent has died and you've recoupled.
Mm.
That's the way step families started, you know, centuries ago. Somebody
Right.
would die. And then in the 60s, 70s, it was more divorce. After COVID, we have more step families that have
Oh
started
wow, that
after
makes
a parent
sense.
has died. And here's the deal: it might appear that parent is dead, they're out of the picture, so we can make like a first time family. And
Mm.
that's not true. Kids
Yeah.
don't want a replacement. They don't want to. Often the parent wants to replace the missing person, and poor step parent walks in to try to replace. Kids don't want a replacement. And they really need company for their grief. And grief over losing a parent is not an event.
Yeah.
It's a process. And it's something that stays with you your whole life. Your
Yeah.
whole life. And so to expect that a kid's going to get over it and accept a step parent is a setup for failure. Expecting that the kid has they've likely lost an arm or a piece of their heart. And so that's going to be part of your family. And step parents, kids who've lost a parent are often less welcoming of step parents
Yeah.
because it's that much more change. So really understanding that you need that step family map and that you need to welcome this parent into your family. Help kids plant a tree or a shrub
Mhm.
at times like birthdays and celebrations. What would your mom have done?
Mhm.
I live in an over 55 community, and one of my neighbors is a stepmom and her stepdaughter got married. The mom had died like 15 years ago,
Yeah.
and the stepmom said, you know, the stepmom was really tuned in. The stepmom said, "What should my role be in this wedding? I'll bet she's
Oh.
missing her mom." And I said, and then she said I should just stay out of it. I said, no, go to your stepdaughter and say, I bet you're missing your mom.
Mm.
How should we include her in this wedding?
Yeah,
And
that would
they
be
helped.
so nice.
It was wonderful. They had a picture of the mom. I'm going to cry at the front of the church. They found some of the mom's clothes and jewelry that the girl wore
Oh my
as
god,
part of
no,
her
I feel like
wedding.
I'm gonna cry. That's
Oh,
so
it was
beautiful.
wonderful. And she was
Yes.
included in the ceremony that, this is what your mom would have said. Um, I'm gonna cry. you know, this was 15 years later, still
Yeah.
part. So no, if you're coming in, if you've lost a partner or you're coming in as a step parent when there's been a death, your job is going to be to embrace that missing person and help your stepkids to really include that person in your lives.
That's absolutely so true and so beautiful as well. That story was amazing, and I was stopping myself from crying that entire time. um yeah, because well, not me personally, but my stepbrothers, I guess me in connection, has a personal connection to that because their mom died uh just maybe 2 years before my mom and their dad
Oh,
got married. And like I said, we were
uh-huh,
always family friends, and I used to
uh-huh,
play with them when I was younger, and we always knew each other
uh,
and that kind of thing. So the relationship was there, it was good, but it was a really traumatic death. as well. So there was a
What
lot
the
of process that needed to happen
mhm.
there. And I think that also, in a weird way, was kind of a fuel for my mom and my stepdad to get together, because my
Yeah.
mom is very empathetic person.
Aw.
So she's
Oh, like you.
always, oh, I try to be. Thank you so much. But she tries to just reach out to everybody that needs help, and especially if it was a friend. She was always in contact with him to try and make sure he was okay, and
Oh,
taking him
aw.
even to church when she went to church, and seeing if that would help, and trying to just be there for him. And I guess it kind of created a bond with them, and then over time they ended up getting married themselves. Um, but because I was younger and because I was in university at the time, I didn't actually get to be very involved in the side with the stepkids to see how they process that.
Okay.
But I know that they do have a really good relationship with my mom, so it's so interesting to try and think about the strategies that she would have used to try and like be very careful with how
Mhm.
she's coming in as kind of not really a replacement, but an insertion into a place that was already filled.
Oh, wow, that's beautifully put. Ask her.
Yeah, I feel like I should now.
Yeah.
I feel like I should. I have to ask my mom this, and now I have to go tell my stepdad that he did a brilliant job. I have like a whole family
Aw.
intervention to do now.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's just sweet. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this with me. This is brilliant, and I'm so happy that I got to talk to you and listen to all of these different insights and be so much more educated on step families and step relationships in a way that I never even imagined. And I think that my listeners are going to really love it, and I'm so happy that they got to hear from you as well. So, are there any last words that you would like to give to the audience about this?
Um, I think you've said it beautifully, Naomi. You know, if when you have a map, it's really, really helpful. Step families really can be thriving, healthy places, and it sounds like you have that experience with your stepdad. And they're challenging.
Oh yeah,
You
they
know,
definitely can be.
I'm how many years? 20, 23 years married and another five. So almost 30 years into my relationship with my stepkids. They're now grown-ups with kids. My daughter now has three little ones. Um, and we're still a step family. My husband is still closer to his kids than I am, and I'm still closer to my daughter than he is. Um,
Which I feel is
eh,
also natural as well.
yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
so glad you did this. I'm really appreciative.
Oh, thank you. I'm really appreciative that you could come. And I also just want to once again stress to everybody to please, 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 please check out Dr. Papernow's books. Both of them are so insightful and have so much information. And also, her website was amazing, which is where I found her. It's first of all very welcoming. I don't know how to describe it just on the podcast, which is why I want to encourage people to go check it out. But it's just really a very nice environment to be on, and it's really informative. There's so many different channels and so much more of her work that you can go check out, which is so valuable, as you can see. So yeah, that's all we have for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Dr. Papernow, once again for being on the show, and we are out. Hi, guys. So, in my mesmerization with Dr. Papernow, I completely forgot to do the outro for the show. So, if you enjoyed the Notes and Quotes podcast, please make sure to follow and give us a review. Give us a like, share this with somebody that you think would be interested in, because I think this was a really insightful and super therapeutic episode as well, for me at least. And if you want more of the Notes and Quotes podcast, you can check out our socials. We are on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and now LinkedIn. We're now on LinkedIn, guys, so go check us out there at the Notes and Quotes podcast. Same thing for the YouTube, Notes and Quotes pod for the Instagram and TikTok. My secret favorite is the Instagram. I would really recommend checking out the Instagram. It's the most fun, most engaging. And yeah, if you want more of me, you know where to find me on Instagram at Naomi A. Cambridge. And I can't wait to share with you guys again. And I can't wait to see you guys next week. Bye.